everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Everyday Board Games with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
We just want to give a quick notice real quick. We are going to be changing a few things up real quick. We're just letting you know at the head of this episode that this is our board game brainstorm that's going to actually... Breakdown, sorry. That's going to actually start our cycle. Normally we start with the top 8 debate. Changing a few things up this month because we got an abundance of interviews this past month, and we just want to make sure that we have that in there. So because of that, we're going to be canceling the next board game brainstorm, because of which, and we'll also do the news next month, just so you know. So stay tuned for that. Stick around for this episode. Hope you enjoy.
And enjoy the interview with Ken Gruhl.
And welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your hosts, Daniel.
And Daniel.
And today we have a very special guest. This is Ken Gruhl. Say hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So as listeners to our podcast know, we like to have special guests, people involved in the gaming industry. Ken is a designer. Tell us a little bit about yourself and our viewers.
Sure. I will tell the semi-short story, but so I've been designing for probably about 15 years now. I started probably like most designers with like Catan and all those, and then eventually got the curiosity to try designing my own thing. And yeah, since then I've mostly been focused on like mass market games. But as like a gamer myself, I love hobby games. I love gateway games, and so that's like the stuff that I enjoy playing. But from a design standpoint, I design more mass market, but every now and then I kind of dabble in like the gateway style games. So
that works.
Yeah.
So would you say like gateway is kind of like your higher end as far as complexity, or?
So far, yeah. I mean, I feel like I could attempt to design something more strategic. It would just, I probably wouldn't do it well. So I'm sure just like designing anything, there'd be a huge learning curve to it. So yeah, I stay kind of in my lane of like simpler, easier to I guess, more simplified type designs. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with simplification. In fact, one of our favorite designers is Phil Walker Harding. We always bring up in the podcast, and we always love how simple but elegant his designs are, right? And we always I always talk about that elegance. Like the more you can take away from a game brings out the funner parts that you want to do anyway, in my opinion. So, do you agree with that?
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, we like our
we like our heavy
too.
games, but
Sure.
To get more people in the hobby, you want something that's more straightforward
Yep.
and easy to get to the table.
Yeah. So, we'll be asking you more about your philosophy as we go through. As listeners to our podcast know, we're going to be going through Ken's gameography here, starting with the oldest, all through the newest, and possibly future. We'll talk about that later. And anything that you want to tell us about it on the way, feel free to tell us any anecdotes you have. And let's get started. According to Board Game Geek, which sometimes the dates are a little shenanigans on how they work, let's start with unnatural selection. Ken, was this your first published, or is it just how the Board Game Geek ranked it?
Yeah, so this was the first one that came to market. Past the Pandas was the first one that we signed, which is the second one listed here. So I guess to kind of rewind a little bit, when I first started designing, I was designing with my best friend that I've known literally since birth, Quentin Weir. And so we both kind of went on this journey together, and just by happenstance, he or his family knew a couple of game designers in the industry, and they were both on the mass market side of things. But the names are Gary Donner and Michael Steer, and they're both like industry legends in the mass market side of things. And so we went into their office. They have a wall full of like million unit sellers. So you go in there and you're just like blown away by everything they've done. So we started trying, like our first designs were more in line with like a Catan style, Puerto Rico style type weight to them. Mm-hmm. And then once we met with them and told them that we wanted to do some designs, they were the ones that were like kind of trying to push us towards mass market, just because that's the area they knew. So we started kicking around some ideas, trying to simplify some things, and just kind of got in the habit of designing a bunch of things, bring them to the table, realizing they're all terrible, kind of rinse and repeat for a long time until eventually we got to a point where we had some things that we liked enough that we thought maybe we could show. So Unnatural Selection was one of those. We went to the New York Toy Fair, and that's where we met a variety of publishers, and R&R Games was one of them. We played it with them at the booth, and I believe they signed it just like on the spot. Like we played it with them.
Nice.
We played it with Frank, who's the
Yep.
one of the owners of R&R.
Frank D.
And then he brought over like some more employees.
Yeah.
And then, yep. And so we like played a few rounds. He brought over some more people. We played a few more rounds, and then eventually, I'm pretty sure that was one that he just like signed on the spot. So that was a fun one. Doesn't happen often where they sign a game on the spot, but always exciting when it does. So, and especially when you're like brand new, and so yeah, I think we'd been designing probably by like about 2 years or so before we got our first contract.
Oh, that's cool. Did his brother Dan play it by chance?
And Unnatural Selection.
Oh, sorry.
What was that? Yeah, absolutely.
Great guys.
So
Great
we know Frank and Dan pretty well.
Yeah, that's good. So how does Unnatural Selection work?
It is kind of like a riff on I don't know, I don't want to say like Cards Against Humanity, but it's basically like there's a challenge that comes up, like most likely to win in a potato sack race, and then everyone is secretly playing an animal card from their hand, and then they all get revealed, and you don't know who played what. And then on the other side of the card is modifiers, so you could have like, but is covered in slime or is constantly sneezing or whatever, and then everyone can then freely play those modifiers onto any of the animals out there, and then the one judge for the round gets to pick who they think would win in that potato sack race or whatever the challenge is. So kind of similar to a game like Super Fight. I think it came out prior to Super Fight, but it's like in that genre of type of games. So very silly, casual, fun. But yeah.
Very cool. Awesome.
All right, and you were mentioning it earlier. The one that was originally signed first is the second on the list here, and it's Past the Pandas.
Yeah, Past the Pandas, signed with Playroom Entertainment, which was later purchased by Ultra Pro. So this is like a really simple dice game. It's one of our. It was the first game that we got signed or had a contract to, and to date, it's still like one of my favorite games that we've designed. So it was literally probably like the blind squirrel finding a nut, where like we didn't even know what we were doing, but we just got super lucky and designed something that was like that was actually really fun. So it's like a simple game, just comes with 20 dice. Your goal is just to get rid of your dice. And probably the most fun story from this one was when we were at Toy Fair, we were pitching it to Playroom Entertainment, and Elisa Teague was working there.
Oh yeah.
And so we had a meeting with her. This is our first time meeting her ever. And so we pitched a couple concepts, and then came time to pitch Past the Pandas, and we brought it to the table, and it's a dice game. So as dice games go, you can just get unlucky with your rolls. And she rolled terribly, like the worst rolls ever. And we're just sitting there like, oh man, this is going like so poorly for her. She's gonna hate this. We finished the game. She got absolutely smoked, and she was like, I love it. We're like, oh wow, all right, great. So we were very worried that she was gonna hate it just based on the fact that she got so unlucky, but she saw through her unluckiness and realized that there's a fun game behind it. And so, yeah, that was Past the Pandas.
Yeah, I know I've heard anecdotes of like whenever you're pitching to publishers, always have the publisher win. It makes them feel better about it. Yeah, that's just how dice work, though.
Yep.
Cool. All right, on to our next one. That is going to be this is probably the first one I've owned of yours, Dungeon of Fortune.
Yeah, Dungeon of Fortune. So this one was with Tasty Minstrel. So we, both Quentin and myself are from Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where Protospiel is at. And Protospiel is a convention where designers come with their designs and people play them and give feedback. And it's just like it's a good, I think 2 or 3 day event where you just get tons of feedback as a designer. So we had started going to that, and um, early on, we met Seth Jaffe, who was the developer at Tasty Minstrel, and so we built up a friendship with Seth from that. And then at one point, we had a push your luck dungeon crawl game that we showed to him, and he started thinking about it and was like, what if we put it into this world of dungeon roll, which is a game that they had that was on Kickstarter and did well for them. So we started kind of tinkering with it and trying to see if it could fit into that universe. And this was kind of the byproduct of that. So we just put the skin of that game onto what we had and made some tweaks to make it kind of work. And we got to Dungeon of Fortune.
Yeah, I'm actually quite a fan of Dungeon Roll. That's up there as one of my favorite pressure like dice games. And Dungeon of Fortune, I bought it immediately after it came out just because it's like it has the dungeon name on it. Let's go, But yeah, it was fun. I liked it.
Yep. I mean, looking back on all of my old designs, there's of course tons of these that I would love to redesign, or I can like nitpick all the things that I would change about them. But I think Dungeon of Fortune, I think we realized, or at least looking back on it, we realized like how we kind of we took out some of the wide spikes or the high spikes that you have while playing the game, which actually is really important in a push your luck game. Like if the more you kind of like flatten it out and the more you make each turn a little bit more samey, the less opportunity you have for players to really experience those epic turns and those really wildly fun turns. And I know that often goes against like what Eurogamers want, or what
right. It throws off some balance, gateway
right? Designers want, where they want the balance. They don't want players to have like those crazy turns, but there is something fun about those spikes. So looking back on that one, I would definitely change some things about it. But again, it's all in the past.
For now, right.
All right, next one on our list here is Cup a Cup.
Cup. So this is also with R&R. This is like a really simple speed game that Quentin and I did. And I guess I should mention all of the games up until at least a few from now are all with Quentin. So we did like 100% of our designs together. And then at some point I start to do some of my stuff on my own as well as work with other designers. But yeah, this one was with Quentin. And we had the pre-existing relationship with R&R Games. So we showed him a game that was just, for our prototype, it was some Chobani yogurt cups. We just had nine of these cups, and then a couple of dice. And it's a speed game where you roll the dice and you quickly try to find the odd thing missing. So there's 3 colors and 3 shapes. So there's like a yellow circle, a yellow square, a yellow triangle, a red circle, square, and triangle, and a blue circle, square, and triangle. And so if you roll the dice and it's like a blue circle and a red square, then you're looking for the missing shape and the missing color, which would be a yellow triangle. So it's just a speed, like whoever can grab it first gets it. And you're putting those cups in front of yourself. And to win, you need to get a certain number of cups in front of yourself.
Okay.
So it's a very simple game, but we've had a lot of fun with it. I think that one, looking back on it, a good lesson that we learned was what you show a publisher will sometimes make its way all the way to the final product. And so we used just a yellow circle, a yellow square, and a yellow triangle, and those colors and shapes. And looking back on it, we're like, oh man, we could have made those like more fun colors / shapes, and kind of modified it that way, as well as yellow on white is never a good thing. So we probably would have changed some things graphically with it, but we still really enjoy the game. It's a very fun, casual game.
Cool.
So, yep.
All right, the next one we have is Fast Flip from Blue Orange Games.
Yeah, Fast Flip, again, also in this same vein of like really quick, fast games that you can pick up and start playing. So this one was with Blue Orange. We met Thierry, who's the owner of Blue Orange, at Toy Fair, and showed him this game that essentially you flip over a card, it'll say either a number on it or a fruit type on it. If it says a number on it, then you're looking for how many fruit are on this card that you just flipped over that are shown exactly that many times. And if it shows a fruit, then you have to shout out the number for how many times that fruit is shown on the picture. So it's just a quick, like, process the card, shout out the answer. And this one was kind of fun. It came out right after. So Blue Orange used to have Spot It, and then the rights for it reverted back to Asmodee. And so they were kind of looking for a game in a similar vein as that to fill their catalog. And so it was kind of just like the right place, right time. They saw this game. It was really quick, easy to pick up, and they thought it could fill that similar slot. So, yeah, this one came together really quickly, and it did really well out the gates. And it was probably like our first like success, I would say, in terms of like commercial success. And not that that's like the end all goal for what we do, but it at least helps. It helped us see the picture of like how could we eventually become full-time game designers. So yeah, it was a fun one. That was the first one that I had that went into Target, so that was also kind of like a big achievement.
Oh yeah,
nice.
But
that's a satisfying feeling. I'm sure, like seeing your game on the store shelf, right?
Yeah, no, it was very cool. It's a surreal moment seeing it, but yeah, that was a fun one.
Yep, there you go.
All right, and the next one here is actually one of the bigger ones, especially for our local game shop too, and this is Happy Salmon.
Yeah, Happy Salmon is probably the game I'm most known for. So for the longest time, and probably still to today, when someone introduced me as like a game designer, they'll be like, "Oh, this is kind of like the person who did Happy Salmon." And so this one is definitely a special game to me, just because it helped kind of pave our way and open up some doors. But a lot of the games that I've created, like I don't exactly remember the moment that I created them. This one I remember the exact moment. Like I was living in New York. I was out on a run, and I was like running in a really small loop. It was like a 16th of a mile loop, and I was just like running around in circles, and I was just thinking of games, and this game just like popped into my head fully formed. And so luckily when I got home, I was able to like record it, and it didn't lose it, which usually happens. But yeah, we play tested it. It was also one of those rare ones that like from the very first play test, you could just tell something was there. So we shopped it around a bit. It was, I guess, to give more story for this one. We initially called the game Switcheroo. So we weren't calling it Happy Salmon. We were just calling it Switcheroo. We didn't have any idea for like packaging or anything. It was just a card game. We showed it around. We got nowhere with it. We probably showed it to like 10 publishers. And then by kind of luck, the publisher Endless Games had a game called Switcheroo that was just coming out. And so we were like, all right, we have to change the name for it. So we were thinking of a new name, and we were like, Happy Salmon's great. So we we changed to Happy Salmon. And then we showed it to, we had met with North Star Games, and sorry to go into another story, but we met Dominic Krapuschetz from North Star. We met him at Protospiel, and he was actually the one that he first invited us to come to New York Toy Fair. And so we'd work the booth for him for like 3 days, and then our last day we get to show off our games with other publishers. So that was kind of our foot in the door to get into New York Toy Fair, because it's an industry only event. So unless you have some sort of tie to the industry, you can't go in. So we already had this relationship with Dominic, and because of that, we'd pitched him some stuff before. Nothing ever like worked out. But the show that we had, Happy Salmon, they had just hired Nick Bentley into North Star Games, and I'd actually read Nick Bentley's blogs, and so I was familiar with the name Nick Bentley. I never met him before, but it was like this weird moment where like I saw that Nick Bentley was working there, and I was like, wait a second, you're the person who's writing all these blogs that I love, and so we kind of connected from the blog post that he wrote, and then when I pitched him all the games that I had for the show, um, he like immediately lit up once he played Happy Salmon, and he was like, "This is the game, like this is it." And so he was the champion for that game internally for them. He really pushed it, and yeah, luckily they ended up signing it. They came up with the idea of the fish pouch, was genius,
Yeah.
and that was I remember I can't remember if it was like a 24 maybe 2016 Toy Fair, whenever it was that they launched it. I just like remember like the buzz that it created, and it was by far like the first game that I had that ever created any sort of buzz like that, and it was a very fun feeling of like, oh wow, there's something special here. So yeah, that one was really cool, and it had a good life with North Star Games, and then ultimately was purchased by Exploding Kittens, which I'm currently a full time designer at Exploding Kittens, which I'll get into later. But yeah, so I am very happy with how the game is done, and it was a fun project to work on.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is probably my one of my favorite party games. I love. We still have the fish pouch at our store, and
Oh,
so even when I'm selling the Exploding Kittens version, I was like, all right, let's grab a fish. Let me show you guys this game real quick. And and I remember my favorite memory from this game playing it. It was at the Gamma Expo, like in probably about 2016. And I remember I played it with the main guy from the main person, I forget his name, from North Star, and we played it with two copies of it, so 12 players, with a chair in between everybody, and everyone at the whole play hall just stopped. They just stopped playing whatever Euro games that they were playing, and they just like, this group is the loudest. Like, what is going on over here? And I remember like probably 100 people just stopped playing, and it's like, what, like, why are they doing this? Like, and it was just a riot the whole time. But I gotta ask, how did the Happy Salmon come up? Like, what is this? Like, was this your creation, or
yeah,
was this?
yeah, we've had that question before. No, uh, so Quinn and I had a buddy that so Quentin went to University of Michigan. I went to Michigan State. He had a roommate named Alex that he taught us this happy salmon move at one evening when we were out um, having a few beverages. He taught us this move, and we were like, "This is awesome!" And so it just kind of like stuck in the back of our heads, and every now and then we would do the happy salmon because it was just hilarious to us. And so when it came time to come up with this game, we were we were thinking of like another action to put into it. And at one point, we had the action was touch like pat a head. So like you just pat the person on the head, and we realized there's a lot of people that don't want to be touched on the head. So we're like, let's
Sure.
come up with something else that's fun. And so that's when we put in the happy salmon, and it just worked perfectly. Um, and then after that, we went back to Alex, and we were like Alex, this is great. Like, where did you learn this? Because we had people asking us, and we were like, we need to know the origin of it. And he was like, wait, I thought I learned it from you guys. So he thought he learned it from us. We thought we learned it from him. That's the end of where we can trace where we where the origin of that was from.
There you
Uh,
go. It manifested itself
Yeah, there you go.
for its own benefit. There you go. That's what we'll say.
yeah, but yeah, to your point though, it is a very loud game. I've had a lot of publishers kind of curse my name whenever they've had to like be in a show next to North Star because they're like it was so loud and disruptive, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say.
It
I
is what
mean,
it
he
is.
just recently played it at a wedding, so
That's true. Yeah, I played this at a wedding, which was
Oh, that's
just
great.
the weirdest. It was so good. Because the silent variation of it with the hand signals and whatnot, we played that because
Mm,
there was a live band and we are still playing. It was a board game themed wedding. We're like, well, we got to play something. So it was between like this and Pit were the two that we could play. You know,
yeah,
good stuff.
oh, that's great.
All right, the next game on our list is Coin Quest.
Yeah, so Coin Quest. This is the first game that I did solo. So Quentin, he started a company called Elderwood Academy, which they make like dice boxes for D&D
Oh,
accessories. Um, so they make all sorts of like they make like rolling trays and dice towers and stuff like that for D&D accessories. And so he was basically working like 70 hours a week. And so I, as much as I love designing with Quentin, it got to a point where I was like, I wanted to design all the time and he was just busy. So I was like, do you mind if I do my own stuff? And he was like, no, absolutely, go ahead. So I started doing some of my own designs. This one was kind of this was my take on a back building slash deck building game. And it, there's uh, there's a Steve Jackson game called Revolution
Mm-hmm.
that I played long ago and I really loved it. And there's like this hierarchy to your bidding that you're doing in that game that I loved. And so I tried to see if I could take some of that experience and kind of simplify it and condense it and then mix it with deck building. So this was the output of that. So
Very cool.
um, yeah,
Awesome. On to our next.
all right. The next game we have on our list here is Most Wanted, published by North Star Games. It looks like.
yeah. So North Wanted, or Most Wanted, geez. So this was we had a relationship with North Star already. We'd come up with a Western themed game, and this one was kind of fun. We pitched it to Dominic. We didn't have the sell sheet or the game with us when we pitched it to him, so this one was literally like just a napkin pitch, where we're having lunch with him, and we just started like sketching on a napkin what the game was, and he got excited by it, and so we started working with them on it, and they kind of moved quickly on it. So we put it into development. Um, the game was just a single board that had all these different actions on it that you could take. They were all kind of like pokerish, Wild West type actions. And their team um, made it modular, so you can like swap out what the actions are each game and add a ton of variety to it. So yeah, it's basically it's just like a card game or it's driven by a deck of poker cards, and each turn you're selecting which action you want to do, and then for most of the actions that you select, everyone around the table has a chance to join in and try to beat you. And essentially, you're trying to get enough notoriety to win, but every time you lose a challenge, you have to pay bail, and your bail price increases the more notorious you get. So it's like this nice kind of self-balancing catch-up mechanic that's built into that game.
Cool.
So yep,
All right. The next one we have is Funky Chicken Card Game.
yeah, Funky Chicken. So this was kind of riding on the coattails of Happy Salmon. Uh, so North Star wanted to do a follow-up to Happy Salmon, and they just wanted to change up the actions. They ended up just doing this one fully in-house. So we still got our name on it because the game engine is Happy Salmon, but they just swapped out the four different actions on it, and kind of put a different spin on the game. So I I don't have many stories to this one because I wasn't involved really in the design
Sure.
process at all. But yep, that's Funky Chicken.
It was probably more or less just like, hey, can we do this? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, exactly.
Cool.
All right, next one we have here is Monster Match.
Yeah, so Monster Match again was with North Star, and this one was so they wanted to kind of expand on their pouch games because they had Happy Salmon in a pouch and was doing well, and they wanted to create like a line of games that were in pouches, and so they called it Happy Planet. And Monster Match is a simple kids game that has these cards that have monsters on them that have different characteristics, like different number of eyes, different number of arms, and different number of legs. And then each turn, there'll be some number of these monsters just on the table so everyone can see them. And each turn, someone will roll the two dice. One of them will say a number like three, and then the other will say an attribute like eyes. And then everyone is quickly looking to find a monster out there that has 3 eyes, and they want to slap it. And if you're the first one to slap a monster with 3 eyes, you get to collect it. Um, and then as like an added incentive to kind of carefully look at what you're grabbing, each monster also had 1, 2, or 3 donuts on the card, and that was your points at the end of the game, or that's how many points that card was worth. And so not only do you want to be fast, but you also want to find the monsters that have 3 donuts because they're worth the most. So, yep. So Monster Matches, it was their follow up in that Happy Planet line, um, and it didn't have the same splash as Happy Salmon, but we're still really proud of it, and it was on the recommended list for the Kenner Spiel. So we're excited by that.
Very cool. All right, the next one is the first one I see here from Gameright Games. That is Cahoots, and which, if I'm not mistaken, just came out with like a
Yeah.
revisioning, a repackaging, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So Cahoots, this is another one of my solo games. This is with Gamewright. Um, the game itself is fully cooperative. I like to call it basically like cooperative Uno. So everyone has a hand of cards that are just numbers and colors, and then there's 4 discard piles on the table. And each turn you're simply playing one of your cards onto one of those discard piles. But the hook of the game is there are also these goal cards that are out there. So there's always 4 goal cards showing, and the goal cards will be things like 3 of the piles have to be green, or all the sum of all 4 piles have to be 10. So you're working with everyone else, like seeing which goal cards you think you can accomplish, and trying to complete all the goal cards before you run out of cards in your deck. So it's to date probably one of my favorite games that I've designed, and it's my wife's favorite game. So we've played like a couple hundred games of it. So it's definitely for a while it was like our Sunday morning game. So it was just a fun way to start the day. But yeah, they just recently relaunched it in like a smaller size package.
Which I hope more people play this. I adore, and I'm glad you called it cooperative Uno because that's how I describe it to people. But I don't like to bring that up with the designer on there. It's like because I wasn't sure.
Oh,
that was the
no,
intent,
no,
but
it's
like
I mean,
it
as
works.
much as people talk trash about Uno, like it's a great game. Like it's sold as many copies as it had for a reason. So I see nothing wrong with calling it cooperative Uno.
Yeah, exactly. Now I wish that one day they like Hasbro licenses this from Game Right. It's like it's like let's be cooperative Uno together or whatever. Play as one, play as Uno. I don't know, something stupid, but that would be brilliant.
That'd be cool.
All right.
That'd be fun.
Was
So
that mine or yours?
I believe this was yours, but the next one we have on the list is one we kind of talked about, but this is a reimplementation of it, and this is Dracaris Dice, a reimplementation of Past the Pandas.
Yeah, so this was right around the time that Game of Thrones was in its popularity, and they wanted to kind of just put a game out there that had that retheme to it. So they chose Passive Pandas for it, and kind of a fun evolution of Passive Pandas with this is there's one of the die faces on the original Passive Pandas, which is the bamboo, that is a little bit more like tricky to understand and to figure out especially for non-gamers. And so although it served its purpose in the game and it worked really well, it was always that one mechanic in the game that kind of like it stayed in the back of my mind because I really wanted to fix it. And so this we eventually came up with what we called the fireball mechanic in Dracaris Dice, where anytime you roll a fireball on your turn, that goes into the middle. And then anytime you don't roll a fireball, you have to take all the fireballs from the middle. So it creates this moment where like someone will roll a couple fireballs, they'll go in the middle. I'll roll a fireball, go into the middle. Someone else will roll a fireball, go into the middle, and then like there's 5 in the middle, and you're trying to get rid of your dice. So it's like the the pressure or the tension rises and rises to like not like or to constantly be able to roll a fireball just so you don't have to take them all. So
That sounds fun.
we added that into this game, and then in later versions of Pass the Pandas, we actually just changed the bamboo to match how it works here because it works so much better.
Cool.
So,
Cool.
yep.
All right. Our next one is foodies.
Yeah, foodies. So this was with Simon. This was a game that I showed to Eric Lang at New York Toy Fair. It was my first time meeting Eric, and he ended up being the one of the developers on the game. So from that, we kind of built up a friendship, and we've done some designs since then. So it was fun to have a chance to meet Eric and kind of learn his some of his design chops while working on this one. But this one is a kind of a simple like tableau building game in a similar vein as like a Space Base or a Machi Koro, where you're building out your own personal tableau, and you, the, you're putting food stalls into like your little food court area, and you get a bonus by having certain stalls adjacent to other stalls or having like certain nationalities of food, all in your food court. And so there's kind of this combo nature of trying to optimize how you get your food court, as well as the luck of the die as to which food stall will be targeted each round. So you collect some more money and or points and race to a certain threshold of points to win.
I know. I'm looking at some of these pictures on here, and it's making me hungry with some of that food.
Yeah, there's some fun art in there.
Yeah. All right. The next one we have on our list is actually one of my podcast partner's favorite ones. He brought it over to our game night, and we really enjoyed this one. Mystic Market. And I like it because of the way things change as you're messing around with the levels of the spells or something like that. Or magic or whatever that.
Yeah, like basically like the general cost of them. Like
Yeah.
it's like a stock market thing with physics. Like as weird as that sounds, but it works really well.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mystic Market, this one was with Think Fun. They typically don't do this style of game, but when I pitched this to them, so I pitched it to Josh West, who works at Think Fun, and they took it in because they were intrigued because they mostly do like educational games and single player puzzles. But there's something about the stock market that they're like, oh, could this be like an entry level stock market type game? And so they brought it in to evaluate it. And every time I talked to him, like I followed up with him every like 3 to 6 months, and he's like, just so you know, this isn't the type of game that we do, but like it sticks around because people like it, and so it's like it kept on having this shot, and eventually they're like, yeah, let's just do it. So the original game was called Milk Market, and you're buying different types of milk, and I just had like little wooden crates on a little ramp that had the market. But they had really cool ideas for the product of it, and so they used those little potion bottles with like colored sand in there, and it turned out great. So yeah, I was really happy with how this one turned out.
Yeah.
The big thing about it too is it has that toy factor that sometimes it's missing in some board games and stuff like that. So it still lets you. We're playing games. We're playing toys. In all honesty, and it gives you that toy factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to real quick branch over to some of the like Think Fun logic puzzles?
Sure.
Yeah, since that'll be a good transition real quick. Let's talk about some of the logic puzzles that you've worked with Think Fun Think Fun.
So so I've done two logic puzzles with Think Fun. One is called Geologic, and one is called Dumpling House. So Geologic is one when I designed with another design partner, Jeremy Posner, who I guess just take a step back. So Jeremy used to work for a couple different game and toy and like design firms in Chicago. So he worked for Ray Kemper, and then after that he worked for Big Monster Toys, and he also did an internship at Mattel. So he was much more rooted in like the toy side of the industry. Even though he worked on some games, he was like much more in that side of things. So I met Jeremy. I at one point I was talking to Nick Bentley from North Star, and I was like, "Hey Nick, like, do you know any like up and coming game designers that like I should collaborate with?" And he threw Jeremy's name out there, and he's like, "This guy like knows Hook really well." So I started working with Jeremy, and sure enough, he's like fantastic at game hook, and he's also an engineer, so he can mold things, or he can design things and 3D print things, and um, so we've collaborated a bunch on things, and so coming to Geologic is a 3D puzzle from Think Fun, where essentially you have this sphere that's kind of like a planet, and then you have a bunch of land pieces that kind of puzzle into it, and each different puzzle you're given specific pieces that you have to use, and you need to fully fill in the planet to win the puzzle. So oftentimes there's only like a single way that you can actually do it. But yeah, it's a simple, fun puzzle that kind of scratches your spatial reasoning and 3D-ness. So yeah, that was the first one, and then Dumpling House was another. That's one that actually just came out. That's another single player puzzle with Think Fun that uh, you're given order cards. So it comes with a bunch of these little dim sum baskets that you, at the start of the puzzle, you stack them up in certain ways. And then you're given order cards, and you need to play your order cards in the right order to be able to eat all of the dim sum before you run out of cards. So,
Very
yeah.
cool. Yeah, I've seen this at Barnes a lot lately, and yeah, I've been very intrigued by it. I didn't know you were a part of it, so now I'll probably buy it. So this is how that works.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's kind of fun. Like I didn't even think about single player puzzles as like a thing that I would design. But Jeremy and I were working on we came up with the idea of like, what if we took a D30, so a 30-sided sphere, and made a game out of it. And so he printed this huge D30, and we tried to like create like a Mars rover game with it, and we were messing around with it for a while. And then at one point we just kind of like stopped, and we were like, what if this was just a single player puzzle? Like what if like we kept on like realizing there's like all these complications with it being a game, but then as soon as we started thinking about it as a single player puzzle, like it all just clicked. And so since then I've kind of incorporated that like that question into my design process. So like every now and then I'll just stop and be like, would this be better as a single player puzzle? Oftentimes no is the answer, but occasionally like what would happen with Dumpling House, it used to be a game, and then I ended up changing it to a puzzle, and it worked out a lot better.
Cool.
So
All right, back to your game designs here. The one we have next on our list was The Ferglers.
yeah, the Ferglers. This was a really simple dice game that came out through Bananagrams. So we met them at Toy Fair, and it's a game that Quentin and I both enjoyed a lot. It's a very like extremely casual, light game, and there's hardly any choice in the game. Like the your main choice is like who do you steal from, but it's a pretty light game. So it I know it got bashed on BGG. Not that I care at all, but I was like, oh man, the reviews here are brutal. But luckily, I don't put much weight at all into BGG ratings.
Yeah, we don't really put a lot of stock
yeah, it's
into it.
it was a casual game.
Yeah, we just use it as a resource more than anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a great resource for like I found
Right.
Harmonies from it, and Harmonies is a fantastic game, and I wouldn't have found it without it. But yeah, for like really light mass market games, it's probably not the best source. But anyways,
That's fair.
that's Ferglers.
But those dice, the fuzzy faces on
Yeah.
on one side is just so bizarre. Like, yeah, the production is just hilarious.
It was very bizarre. Yeah, yeah, and like the art on it was strange. It was like a shaped box. Everything was like strange about it, which it was a fun twist that they did. But yeah.
For sure. The next one we have on our list is called It's Getting Dicey.
Yeah, it's getting dicey. So this one is through Marbles. They were a game store as well as a game publisher. They ended up shutting down shop, and a lot of their games or some of their games ended up getting sold to Spin Master, but they kept the name Marbles on it. So It's Getting Dicey was a really fast-paced dice game that's kind of mixed with musical chairs. So everyone has a blue die, a red die, and a yellow die. And once you start the round, there's one fewer card in the middle of the table than the number of players. And each card has a simple thing like two of your dice has to add up to the other die, or your blue die has to equal your red and your yellow die. So like simple math type equations. And as soon as you start, everyone just starts speed rolling. And as soon as you complete one of those cards, you just slap it and you're safe for the round. And eventually it gets down to the point where one person is not able to get a card because there's one fewer cards than the number of players. Um, and so you're just scoring your cards, and first to score, I think, 7 cards wins the game. But yep, It's Getting Dicey. And this one was also, this was uh, a fun one for me because, I had, when we first started off, we were pitching to Think Fun when Tanya Thompson was there. And Tanya eventually moved over to Marbles. So she was the one that was there when they picked this one up, which was really cool because I pitched her stuff previously. And then she's now with Hasbro. So it's been fun to kind of work with her along the way. And she's like a absolute rock star and legend in the industry. But she's one of the best investor relations people out there. So it was kind of a cool, like, this is the first one I was able to land with Tanya. So, yep.
That's awesome.
All right, the next one on our list here is Rose Ceremony.
I've been intrigued about this one. I have not played this one.
Yeah, this one. So this is with Blue Orange. They kind of put like the Bachelor type spin on this.
Yeah.
I think I just called it Roses, but anyway, they went with like that angle for it. But this one is a really simple bluffing type game. I'd probably equate it most to a game like Cockroach Poker, um,
Okay.
where essentially every turn you're going to offer one of your cards to another player, and they will either accept it and put it in front of themselves or reject it and you have to put it in front of yourself. And you're trying to build up these beautiful bouquets. So each card will come with a rose value and a thorn value. And you want your rose value to get as high as you can because that's going to score you more points. However, once your thorn value goes over a certain threshold, then you lose the whole bouquet. So there's this kind of head game of like, why is this person offering me a card right now? Are they trying to like stick me with a bunch of thorns, or do they think I'm going to reject it, and so I should really take it? So a really simple head game, bluffing game to it. But yeah, it's a fun, simple bluffing game.
Cool. Yeah, I want to try this one. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds just hilarious. All right, the next one we have is called Ripple Rush. It's a roll and write, or I believe it's a roll and write.
Yeah, it's a flip and right,
Flip and write.
but yeah,
Yeah.
same genre.
Yeah.
So this obviously probably as most designers did, everyone kind of once they saw the roll and write genre blow up, they took a stab at it. And so this was my attempt in that area. So this is a flip and write game where everyone's working on their own sheet. And I probably equate this to most like a game like Racco, where you're trying to get all of your numbers going from low to high. But you can kind of choose where you put each number. So everyone has 4 different tracks, or a track for each different color. And every time you flip a card, you get to place like it'll be like a blue 22. So I have to place a 22 in my blue column, but I can place it wherever I want. However, all my numbers in my blue column have to go from low to high. So there's reasons why you might want to kind of play a little bit more or less risky. And then this is also around the time that like Ganshan's Clever came out. And that did a really clever use of like these combos, these kind of chaining combos in a roll and write game. So I have kind of a very simple layer of that where like once you complete a row, then you get a bonus. So it just gives you one more thing to think about while you're playing. But yeah, that's Ripple Rush.
Awesome.
I believe this is you.
50 missions, 5 missions difficult. This is an expansion for Cahoots. Yeah. So we'll skip this
Yep.
for now. Sorry. Next one
Sounds
is
good.
Look-See.
Look-See. So this one is with Playroom. It is another like really quick uh, recognition type game, speed recognition type game. You roll 2 dice, and everyone's looking at the card to see the correct answer. So you do like a little bit of a logic puzzle to figure out what you're actually looking for, and then you try to figure out what you're looking for. And this one, I remember this one came out during COVID and just died. Like it just got slaughtered in COVID. And I think most games that came out during that time period, a lot of them just, if they like launched into retail, they just suffered because of it.
Yeah.
So this one was quickly forgotten, but yeah, that was Lixie.
All right, next one on our list is Go for Broke.
Go for Broke. So this one is a push your luck game. This is also with Playroom Entertainment. Kind of just a really simple game of trying to get money bags and race around this loop and score points by doing so. And it has this fun mechanic of if you get an exact match of gophers and foxes, so foxes are bad, gophers are good. But if you ever end your turn with an exact match of them, then you get to take an extra turn. And so it kind of allows you to chain multiple turns in a row, and leads to some fun moments, which is always good in a push your luck game. But yeah, very simple push your luck dice game.
Cool. All right, the next one is Words Over Easy.
All right. So this was our first game. This one I did with Jeremy Posner. This is our first game with winning moves. And this is, I believe, my first word game that I did. Maybe my only word game that I've done. But yeah, so this is kind of a fun. So Jeremy is a great engineer and kind of has all these wacky ideas for the hook. So he had this idea for a egg-shaped die. So it's essentially just a D4, but can't land on the two other faces of it. Or take a D6 and enlarge two sides till it turns into a D4. But this is a word game where all these egg dice are dropped into this dice tower, and they'll either go into the red spot of the dice tower at the bottom or the green spot. And then everyone is trying to write down as many words as they can, and you need to write down words that contain all of the letters in the green and none of the letters in the red. So it's just like kind of works both sides of your brains of like, it has to be all these letters, but it can't be any of these letters. So just a fun game and kind of like the boggle-ish type genre of games.
Okay.
That would break my brain, I feel. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like just...
Yeah, no, there's some people that are just, it's tricky.
Yeah, and I mean that as a compliment.
You get the hang of it once you start playing it.
Yeah.
It's not... Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, and the next one on our list here is a reimplementation of Dracaris dice, Draconic dice. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next game. And this is Bluffineer.
Oh, yes, this one, yeah.
Yeah, Bluffineer. So this came out from Big G Creative. This was... So after we made these egg dice, after Jeremy and I made egg dice for Words Over Easy, we were like, what other shaped dice can we make? And so we had the idea for bone-shaped D4s.
They're cool.
And so this one started completely component first. We had these dice, and we were like, what game can we build off of this? And we ended up landing on a really simple bluffing game where when you're up, you roll the dice. If you roll two of the same die faces, there's like this little kind of legend that shows you exactly what action you get to trigger. Mm-hmm. And you get to, most of them are good things where you get to steal coins from other people or make them trash their coins. And your goal is to get the most gold coins by the end of the game. And if you don't roll doubles, so if you roll like a red and a black, then anyone else can claim. So everyone has a single card in their hand with two colors on it. And anyone can claim that the two colors on the card are exactly the two colors that you rolled. And you either have to believe them and pay them a coin, or you challenge them and then they reveal their card And if they actually do have those, then you have to pay them 2 instead. But if they're lying, then they have to pay you 1. So really simple bluffing game. But they did they did a great job with the production of
Yeah.
this, and I this one was in Target for a while and Walgreens. And I remember they got the price down to like $9.99,
Yeah.
which was wild to me because it was like a bunch of nice coins and like oil on the packaging and these custom dice, but
Yeah.
somehow they managed it. So
Yeah,
yep.
it's really a beautiful production. I mean, like, yeah, the rating isn't like crazy high on Board Game Geek, but like I've played this with my kids and they adore this game. Like, and the bone dice are just brilliant. It's so good. It's so thematic. Like, really brings out like
Yeah,
there's a
they're
lot of
fun.
dice presser like games that are pirate themed, and
Yeah.
this is one of the best. Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
The next one is The Plan from R&R Games.
Yeah, the plan. So this one, another one we did with R&R. This was a game that I think we gave them a simpler version of the game than they ended up publishing, and they kind of added like a pick and pass type element to it, similar to like a Sushi Go. But essentially, there are some number of treasures that are dealt out into the middle of the table each round. Everyone has a hand of cards, and then your cards will have between 2 and 4 colors on it, and you can try to be greedy. And so, if you play a card that has more colors on it, you're going to collect all the treasures in the middle that have any of those or all of those 4 colors on it, or any of those 4 colors. However, whoever plays cards that have 2 colors on it will get to pick first. And so you can try to be greedy and go for big numbers that will just scoop all the stuff. But if you're too greedy, all those things might be gone by the time it's your turn to take them. So really simple kind of game in that genre.
Cool.
All right. Next game on our list here. I see a box of right over your shoulder with it. It's 60 a Second City.
This one's cool.
Yeah, so this one is with Buffalo Games. This might have been the first one. Actually, no, this is the second one we had with them. The first one wasn't on BGG, but so this was a game that I did with Quentin. We had a 2-player domino like city building game that we had been playing around with, and we really enjoyed. But it was 2-player only, and every time we try to expand the player count, it just kind of fell apart. And so we were like, you know what, this has to be 2 players. And luckily enough, Buffalo at that time was looking for a 2-player game, and so we worked with them on it, and they like I. This was another one where like the production quality of it was outstanding for the
Yeah.
price. Like I think it was like 17.99, and it's
Yeah.
like a wooden board and wooden dominoes, and I was like, I don't know how you guys are doing that, but that's awesome. Um, but yeah, this one was a lot of fun. The gist of it is there's various goal cards that are flipped out, which you're trying to complete, and essentially you're trying to make different patterns with your different city types. Like there's residential and commercial and industrial, all the Sim City type tile types. And so uh, once the timer starts, you have 60 seconds to build out your city from scratch. And the only rule is you're just grabbing tiles one at a time, you're flipping them over, and then you choose exactly where you're going to place them. And since it's a 2-player game, there's a lot of like, trying to communicate and yell at your partner like, "Oh, wait, let's go for this one. Let's go for this one." And so you're just frantically doing this for 60 minutes, and then at the end of the 60 minutes, you check to see which of your goals you complete, and you're just trying to complete X number of goals after X number of rounds.
Very cool. Yeah, this production quality is absolutely phenomenal. I used to own this one as well. Even the domino pieces are like have it has like a grid that they fit perfectly in, and it's so cool. Such a great production. Yeah, for like
Mm-hmm.
$18 too. It was really cheap. So let's actually jump over to the
Mm-hmm.
other Buffalo games real quick.
Okay.
So we can talk about those. There's also Tower
Sure.
Tennis, I believe was one of them, and yeah, we're
Tic
gonna
Tac
pull them up on
Pong's
our
another
screen.
one.
Which one?
Tic Tac Pong.
Oh, Tic
Tic
Tac Pong.
Tac Pong.
Yep.
Yeah. So Tower Tennis is one that I did with Quentin. Tic Tac Pong is one that I designed with Jeremy. They're both like bigger dexterity games, which is probably why they're not listed on BGG. But uh, Tower Tennis is a game if you're familiar with like they have these in playgrounds where it's like you throw a basketball up into it and it comes out of like one of four shoots.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
It's like it was based on that like concept, but we shrunk it down and put it on the table, and you're using a ping pong paddle to hit a ping pong ball into it, and essentially you own certain slots or certain like shoots, and so if the ball ever bounces out one of those shoots, you're responsible to hit it back into the device, and if you mess up, then the other person scores, and you just kind of keep playing until someone messes up, and that's the person that scores, and you play, I think, till 21 points or 11 points.
Really?
So that's tower tennis. Um, Tic Tac Pong is a kind of our take on a, a pong bouncing tic tac toe game. But the hook on that one is each team has like their own cups that they will be placing onto this device. So every time you make a shot, you put your cup onto the spot that you made, and so it'll grow vertically as you're playing and make the shots harder and harder to make as it grows higher.
Cool.
So that's tic tac pong.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the big dexterity games that Buffalo comes out with too. Like some of those are just silly and fun. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next game we have on our list, and I know we're getting close on time, so if there's anything you don't want to talk about, you can just go ahead and let us know. Twosome.
Sure. Yeah. Twosome. So that one was also with Buffalo Games. That was a couples, or it was a 2, 4, 6, or 8 player game. But it's mostly like a 2 player game about like getting to know the other player you're playing with, whether it's your partner, significant other, friend, whatever. So yeah, that one kind of came out. There was a big push to put out like conversation starter games, and that was kind of a take on one of those. So, yep.
Cool. All right. We got Snail Mail coming up next.
Snail Mail is from Winning Moves. This is one I did with Jeremy. It kind of uses these like little snails as like as your rack, and I'd probably call it like a mix of like Racco and like trying to complete goals. Actually, not even Racco. It's mostly like you're trying to get cards, align them in certain ways. I guess maybe Racco, sure. You're trying to get cards, align them in certain ways that you complete whatever goal is out there, and then you show everyone, and you get to complete that goal, and you're trying to race to complete X number of goals first. So kind of a similar luck of the draw, as well as like planning as to how you want to arrange your cards to best optimize scoring cards.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, and the next one is one from Exploding Kittens, and this is Mantis. I know my buddy over here is a big fan of this game.
I'm mad you get to bring this one up.
Nice. Well, yeah, this one, honestly, this one next to Happy Salmon is probably one of my favorites. And this, I was very happy with how this one came out. So this I designed with Jeremy. Right. So this was also like one of those games that I think we came up with it during COVID, and we were pitching it around. But you could really only do like online pitches at that point, and so we are showing it via like tabletop simulator, and it was fine. It was just hard to like kind of convey the magic of the game through that pitching style. So uh, right around, let's see, it was like 20, yeah, it was like April of 2021 is when I started working full time at Exploding Kittens. And up until that point, I'd been doing freelance board game design full time for probably like 3 or 4 years. And I was really happy doing freelance, but I knew some of the people at Exploding Kittens, and they're a great team. And Eric Lang was actually consulting there at the time, and he was one of the people that helped or just mentioned that there's a job opening at that point. So I decided to come work full time at Exploding Kittens. And so the first time that I went out to Los Angeles to meet with a team, they told me like, "Hey, bring all of your games that you'd been working on." And so I brought along Mantis along with a few others. Yeah, the first time Alon played it, and Alon Lee is the CEO of Exploding Kittens. The first time he played it, he was like, "Yeah, there's something cool here," and it was a very fast development. It was really fun. I think I showed it to them in like August, and they ended up putting it out like the following maybe March or even February. It was probably March. So it was like a very, very fast development cycle.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and yeah, it's one of those games where like it's very simple, but I think we we figured out like the elegance of the game, and there's kind of this nice dynamic of like, do you use cards offensively or defensively? But it's really easy to teach, so it kind of isn't a similar weight as like an Uno type game, but just offers a different experience. And yeah, it's one we're really proud of.
Cool. Next one we have is Nacho Pile from Pandasaurus.
Nacho Pile. So this one went through many different iterations until I finally landed on this nacho theme. And kind of along the way, I just refined the gameplay to where it was. It's essentially just like a push your luck game where you're trying to collect as many things on your turn as you can, and at the end of your turn, you get to take everyone's pieces of whatever nacho numbers you collected. You just kind of take all of those and put them in front of yourself. And if you ever start your turn with those in front of yourself, then you get to score them. However, everyone else is kind of trying to take them away from you before then. So there's a really fun, simple element of reach in the bag, grab out chips, and push your luck as much as you can, and um, try to get lucky and beat out your opponents.
Yeah.
So,
Fun.
yep, that was my first game that I worked with Pandasaurus on.
Cool.
All right, next one we have on the list here is Left Right Dilemma.
Yeah.
So this one, this is our first like 18 plus game. So this is one I designed with Jeremy. We wrote a lot of the content for it. Jeremy loves writing content, so he was all over that. But essentially, the game itself is a adult party game that's like a series of would you rather questions, and so it creates this pyramid of cards, and you try to guess for the player who is up. You try to guess like the path that they would take down this pyramid of cards, and very fun, silly, light. I don't recommend playing it with your with people who might not like offensive content because there's some questionable cards in there, but
Yeah.
it's very fun.
Yeah, this one, the very first game. Well, I have a good friend of mine and a friend of the podcast, and when his sister came and visited, this was the very first game we played with her, and the very first card on her turn that popped up was what is like the O face card. I was like, oh no, oh no, this is how I'm introduced. This is how I'm meeting his sister. You know that was one of my best. It was yeah, but this is came up with some of the most raucous game nights that we've had. All
Oh,
right.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think even when we pitched this one, I remember pitching it. I think it was like to Mattel, and one of those cards came up that was like, "Would you rather kiss the person to your left or the person to your right?" And like, of course, both the events relations people were sitting on either side of me, and I was like, "Oh god, this is gonna get awkward." It's all in good fun.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not meant to be heavily strategic. It's supposed to be conversation starter or ender. I don't know. One of the
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
Next one we got up here is really loud librarians.
Yeah, so really loud librarians. So in when I first started with Exploding Kittens and that kind of that grouping of games that I presented them that I'd been previously working on with Mantis, another one of those games was what Really Loud Librarians turned into. So it's a word category game where you're splitting into two teams. You're racing around this track. That's like a cardboard inlay track. It worked pretty well. But you're split into two teams, and on your team's turn, you are shouting out things that fit a category that start with one of the three letters ahead of wherever your mover is. So as you're moving along the board, your three letters that you can use is constantly changing.
Okay.
And each round, you're just trying to move further than the other team does, and you're scoring points by doing that. And then the board is also populating over the course of the game with these like kind of like hot letters that if you ever use those, you're going to score additional points if you win the round. So it gives you further incentive to be like, oh, let's use the P right now because it's a hot letter and we'll get some more points from it.
So cool.
So yeah, that one, it turned out really well. This was one of those games that we were like struggling to come up with a theme internally for it. We pitched it to them with like a racing theme, and they knew that it needs to be something that stood out more. And Matt Inman, who is the webcomic The Oatmeal, he was the one that came up with this name, Really Loud Librarians, that was just like fun and playful. And then I'll give him a ton of credit for that name. And then he also came up with a box cover that was like really popped and looked really nice. And they put like a gold foil on it. So it's one of those examples of like a really good product design that really helped like boost up the product itself.
Cool.
All right, next one on our list is Sushi Go Spin Some for Dim Sum.
Yeah, so this one I did design with Quentin. This was a game that we had pitched to Buffalo Games, and they were sitting on it for a while. They liked it, they just weren't able to fit it into the right spot. And then it was right around the time where Buffalo and Game Right merged. And so all of a sudden, then they had the Sushi Go name available. And so they talked to Phil and got his blessings to use the Sushi Go name, and we were able to put it into that line. So the gameplay itself, if you've played Sushi Go, it'll have a similar-ish feeling of like the set collection that you're doing and the cards that you're collecting, kind of all, you're trying to race to complete certain sets and beat out other players by scoring the most points. The hook of the game, though, is it sits on a Lazy Susan, and everyone has a basket that's in front of them, and on your turn, you're either taking the card from that basket, or you're using your chopstick tokens to spin the Lazy Susan in either direction, and you drop off your chopstick tokens and baskets as you go. So those will later be collected by other players, and that's kind of how the currency stays in the game. So yeah, we're really happy with how that one turned out. I know Phil from various conventions, and so I also had a chance to play it with him, and he liked it, which is nice. I mean, it was obviously good to have the Sushi Go inventor like the game that's going into that lineup. But yeah.
Not just like a moral blessing, but a physical one. Like it's like he reacted to this in a good way, positive way. That would have been a terribly awkward moment. Absolutely. It was like, nah, I hate this. All right. Next one we have is the best worst ice cream.
So best worst ice cream. When I was working at, this is from Exploding Kittens. This is probably like 3 years ago now. They decided to launch a line of kids games. And so we were looking for different kids games to do, and Alon Lee asked me if I could come up with like a kids version of Mantis. And so I kicked around the idea of it with Jeremy, and the thing that we were like struggling with was in Mantis, you're stealing cards from other players, which for a 4-year-old can be a little bit traumatic if you're just stealing cards from them. So we came up with the idea of, instead of stealing cards from other players, there would just be 5 of these little standees in the middle of the table, and each turn you're just trying to correctly guess which card you have. And if you're right, you get to take all the cards of that type. But if you're wrong, you have to give that card to the standee of that type. And so it actually creates a really nice like ebb and flow of which standees have more cards on them, and kind of throws off the odds of what you might want to call. But it has a similar DNA as Mantis does, but just in a really simple, easy version for kids to play and understand.
Cool.
The next game on our list is one that you worked with Amigo, from what it's saying, and I don't really want to pronounce that name because I'm going to get it wrong. Because they just have it in the German name.
Yeah, we called it Chicken Out. I will also not try to pronounce how they said it, so we just call it Chicken Out. But This one was it's a push your luck card game that Quentin and I designed. Essentially, the hook of it is you are trying to each turn you either have to flip another card face up into kind of a splayed out stack of all the face up cards, and it has to be higher in number than the previous card, or the same color as the previous card. Otherwise, you bust, and you have to take all those cards in front of them or in front of you. Or you can just chicken out and just take the top card and put it in front of you. So you have this really simple risk reward of like, do I risk it, try to flip the card and not have to take anything if I'm safe, but if I bust, I have to take a whole bunch of cards, or just chicken out and just grab one of the cards. And there's this little added mechanic where if you think someone's going to chicken out, you just call them a chicken, and if they do actually chicken out, you get to give them one of your cards. So it just kind of adds to the peer pressure nature of the game of just getting to call your friends chicken.
I love that.
I actually do want to try this one. It sounds fun.
That sounds great. All right. The next one, you talked about working with Eric Lang before. This is a perfect example of that. This is Life in Reterra.
Yeah, so Eric and I had been kicking around ideas after we'd worked together on Foodies. And one of those ideas was a tile placing kind of, he'll call it a lifestyle game, but basically just like a gateway game, really easy to approach. But we wanted a lot of replayability and a game that you could play a dozen times and wouldn't get sick of. Life in Reterra was it, it started off as like we were calling it Camp Fun Ground, but it was essentially like all these different animals that could potentially be dangerous and eat you, or in this park that you're building out. And we both know Tanya, who was at Hasbro, and so Eric was able to offer her kind of an early look at the game, and their team got excited by it, and so we continued developing it and got it to the point where they ended up licensing the game, and it was the first game that Hasbro put out in the hobby space in quite some time, and it's kind of the start of potentially some more hobby games that they're going to put out. But yeah, it was a really fun one to work on. Again, as I mentioned, Eric is fantastic. I've learned so much from his design chops and the fact that he like works so much on heavier games and I work so much on lighter games. It's kind of fun to have like the blending of those two design worlds and the opportunity for both of us to learn from each other.
And just recently an expansion was announced for this game as well.
Yeah, that was fun to kind of build upon the world and create something that felt new and different within it.
Cool.
That's awesome. Cool.
The next on our list here is Piggy Piggy.
Yeah, so Piggy Piggy is a card game that I designed with Jeremy. This one, Hasbro put out a call to a bunch of inventors looking for a card only game or like a card with just a couple extra component game, and we were working on what became Piggy Piggy at the time, and so we submitted it, and to our luck, that's the one that they ended up selecting. And so they're a great team to work with. Both on Piggy Piggy and Life in Reterra, Hasbro's a fantastic team to work with. So they really kind of brought it to life. They added some fun. The packaging to it is awesome. But yeah, it's a pretty light card game, but it has a lot of fun like take that moments and kind of it's a casual game, but I think just enough meat on it that like a gamer could enjoy themselves with it.
Cool. Yeah, that one does sound really fun. Next one we have is from Exploding Kittens. This is Zombie Burrito. Great components.
Yeah, Zombie Burrito. So this is one that I designed while I was there. So Brian Spence is the original designer for Thrill Burrito. Zombie Burrito was just a standalone expansion that we did to the game where it uses some familiar elements of Thrill Burrito. Of like there's like a spoons type play where you're collecting cards and trying to quickly create sets and place them down in front of you. but all players are split into either being zombies or survivors, and the sets that you collect are going to either give your team advantages or remove advantages from the other team. And then you have a battle after that happens with these little squishies that come in the game. So, yeah, just expanding on the throw burrito um, lineup.
Cool.
All right, the next one we have is You Little Stinker, which is a reimplementation of Pass the Pandas from what it's saying here.
Yeah. Uh, since I am at Exploding Kittens and we're looking for kids games, I had brought up this kids game that I had with Playroom Entertainment called Pass the Pandas, and Alon ended up playing it, and he really liked it, and his daughter really liked it. So we ended up, or Exploding Kittens ended up sub-licensing it from Ultra Pro, and they added in a little like squishy dice shaker that you could put the dice into and shake them up and dump them out. But all the rules are the same as Pass the Pandas aside from that.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And then this one, I had just played recently. This is another game from Game Right called Updog, which I remember a poster on Board Game Geek. The reason I bought it is because it was like, oh, it's like Cahoots, but versus. I'm like, okay, go on. And,
Oh yeah,
yeah, Updog.
yeah. So that is probably a great way to describe it. Is it has some competitive elements to it, but does have the similarities to Cahoots in terms of going for goals. So Updog is a game that I did with Jeremy. Um, it is essentially players have a hand of cards that are numbers and colors. Each turn you're playing out three of them, and there are a variety of different goals that are showing, and you're trying to complete. Ideally, you're trying to complete as many of those as you can, but you're trying to complete goals that you don't think other players are going for, because any that you complete that no one else completes, you get to move your piece on the score track that many spots. And then the last fun little wrinkle to it is every goal card has specific dogs, which are tied to a certain player. They have icons on them. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm playing as the Boston Terrier dog and this goal card has the Boston Terrier icon on it, then if I score it, I get to up dog, which is just move my piece fully up one row on the score track and then still move for it. So there's a huge incentive for me to want to go for that one, as well as for if I'm in the lead, other players will definitely want me not to get that, so they might want to go for it themselves.
This is really fun. I
So
think
that's
you
up
would like
there.
this. Yeah, genuinely, I think you would like this one a lot.
All right, cool. All right, so that finishes everything off on Board Game Geek. You did give us a little bit more, a few more games that you would like to talk about, or
Yep, we could just
I'm
go
happy
through them
to.
real quick. Yeah,
It's up to you guys.
of course. Yeah,
yeah.
let's
Well,
go
we're
ahead.
enjoying ourselves. The first one we have on the list here is Corners Up.
Yeah, Corners Up. So this was an abstract game that we did with Fat Brain. So Fat Brain typically does more like toys, but they kind of branched off for this one, and uh, it's a game where the game started fully component first. I did this one with Jeremy, and we were trying to come up with a piece that you could stack on top of four other pieces to kind of create a pyramid. And then if you had enough of these, you could create like a 1, 4, 9, 16 layer pyramid. So it was like a whole bunch of these pieces into a full pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, basically, the gameplay, you're taking turns placing a piece into this large pyramid that you're all building together. However, if your goal is to get your pieces into what the corner of the pyramid will become. So it's kind of
Okay.
this game of like figuring out where you think the you know the edges of the pyramid might start to be defined, and then try to get into that area first. So very abstract.
Oh wow.
Certainly a little bit outside of like what I typically design, but it was a fun one, and I had a good time with it.
How many players play that one? Is it 2 to 4? Or
Yes, I believe it's 2 to 4.
okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, because I'm a huge abstract strategy fan, and that
Okay.
when you said that
Cool.
like the border will be made up as you play, that okay, that's super intriguing. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
The next one, and we want to double check on this because you said Beavis and Butthead, the game, but we found is it the Great Cornholio game, or is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it is listed on BGG. I don't even know.
We think it
It
was.
is. I don't think my credits are there, but yeah. Anyways, I don't care. This was one that this was a weird licensing deal. So we Goliath Crossman, they were looking for a game for Beavis and Butthead, and we showed them a game that was completely different from this, and they liked it enough to sign a deal with us, and then they ended up wanting to change it completely after that, and so we basically just redesigned a full game for them after we signed a deal for a different game, and changed it to a speed-based game where you're just racing to play out cards as fast as you can, and all the while you're shouting out the insults that Beavis and Butthead say on the show to each other while you're playing the game. So a very simple, casual game, but in the Beavis and Butthead world.
I mean, I can't say I'm not intrigued by what the original design was, but that's.
It was a more clever game, but yeah, I guess it just didn't fit what they wanted. So yeah.
All right, and the next one we have here is the Hershey S'mores game. Perfectly Toasted, yes. I think is the one we have.
Yeah. So that one is a game that we made for Spin Master. This one also started off component first. So we had the idea of a campfire that every time you pushed it down, it was divided into like 6 quadrants or 6 lights. And every time you clicked the top of the campfire, 3 of those 6 lights would light up. And that would indicate whose marshmallow would get toasted. And so it comes with that electronic centerpiece, and then your goal is just to make 3 s'mores first, and each turn you're playing out cards that will either add marshmallows onto the board, and again, these marshmallows will be slowly sucked into to where the fire is. Like there's like concentric rings on it, and every time the zone that you have lights up, you move all your marshmallows forward 1, and they need to get to like this perfectly crispy ring for you to be able to make your s'more. However, if you don't get them off in time, then they'll burn in the fire. So it's just kind of like this timing game of planning out how you get your s'mores all made.
That sounds intriguing.
That sounds very intriguing. Plus the toy factor too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a fun one to build.
Yeah. And then the next one is I'm Just Here for the Snacks, also by Exploding Kittens.
Yeah, so this was also with Jeremy. This was also a component first game that I had. And we kind of set out like a fun design challenge for ourselves of, can we make a game that's just a single piece of plastic? So we ended up landing on a single plastic disc that you spin, and when you spin it, anyone can spin this disc to get the round started, and anyone can stop it with their finger, and half the spots on the spinner are good for you and half the spots on the spinner are bad for you. So essentially you can let the spinner slow down as much as you want so that you can kind of like see it more clearly. However, anyone can stop it, so the longer you wait to let it slow down, the higher the chances are someone else kind of just like swoops in and stops it with their finger. So it's pretty whimsical, but kind of feeds into the just like a very simple game that you can play with just one component. And from that,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from that, they've actually created 3 different games from it. So I'm Just Here for the Snacks. You bring your own snacks with you, so you can play with goldfish or pretzels or whatever you want, and those are like your life tokens. So depending on where you stop the spinner with your finger, either you're getting to eat other people's snacks, or you're losing your snacks away to other players, and you just want to be the last player of snacks to win. And then they also made an adult version, which you play with a beverage, and depending on where you stop it, you're either going to be taking some drinks, or other players are going to be taking some drinks. And then we also made a kids version of it called Snack Monster, which you also play with snacks as your life, but it's just like a much simplified version of it.
Okay.
So
that's cool. Yeah, we rarely see games that are made out of just a single component, and that's It's an interesting design space. I mean, like a single card, I can believe. I've done a few of those, but like, yeah, a press your like timing spinner thingy. That's fun. It's a great
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, it was a fun one.
Cool. Well, then we have some quick questions, but that we're
Sure.
going to be asking you. But yeah, what did you think so far of your walk down memory lane, and as far as your game design goes, what does this tell you?
Oh man. Uh, it was. I honestly, there was until you guys reached out to me, there was a lot of these that I just had not thought of in a long time. So it was kind of fun to rethink about some of these older games. But I did, as I mentioned, there's a lot of things that I would change about a lot of them. But at the same point, I think that's part of the learning process. So yeah, it's been a fun 15-year ride
Yeah, so far, so far. I always say that it's
so
not over
far.
yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right. All right, rapid fire. Shall we do some questions?
So we shall.
Okay.
For one of my first questions I always ask designers is, what is, in your belief, your most underrated game that you've designed?
Hmm. I'll I'll go with Pass the Pandas, just because I mean it's I don't know what qualifies it being underrated. Like it's sold a decent number of copies, but like I feel like it's off the radar of a lot of people. But it's one of those games that just it works very well, and I've played it with lots of different groups, and I played it with all adults, I played it with all kids, and it's usually like a very very good time. So I'll go with that one.
Awesome. Now you brought up that you've designed logic puzzles as well as of course game design. Um, are is that something that's always in the back of your mind that you're actually considering building more logic puzzles or even expanding into other I guess territories of like toy design even since you focus a lot on mass market. Toy factor is a big thing.
Yeah. I don't I don't actively try to design single player puzzles, but kind of as I mentioned, like I'll stop at certain points in games and be like, does this want to be a puzzle? And if the answer is yes, then I might try to create it into a puzzle. Um, but for toys, I've definitely tried to make some toys, and I've worked especially with Jeremy to try to do that, just because he came from the toy side of the industry, so he has way more knowledge in that side. So we've kind of dabbled in that space a bit, and we haven't landed anything that's like a truly just a toy. But we definitely have a lot of toyetic elements in some of our games, and I think that helps make them stand out, if nothing else. So I I do like to think about like is there a toyetic hook, or is there something that kind of helps make this game stand out? And oftentimes toys can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So then my next question is there a designer you would like to work with since your history of working with other designers?
Living or
Yeah,
not,
Yes.
hypothetical.
sure. Yeah, I've kicked around ideas with Phil Walker Harding, and we've never landed anything. But he's definitely one of those that I'd love to work with and actually land a game with. Just because I respect him a lot as a designer, and he obviously comes up with a lot of brilliant games. So he's high on the list. Other designers, I would say like Bruno Cathala is one that does a lot of games that like I enjoy playing a lot. So I put him up high on the list too. And Antoine Bauza is another one. I mean, like Hanabi is one of my favorite games of all time, and so it's he definitely has created a ton of brilliant games. So I'll go with those for now.
Okay.
Awesome. Which actually leads me into my next question. You said Hanabi is one of your favorite games. What, like, spitball, what are, like, some of your top, like, 5, 10 games or whatever? Like, you don't have to list that many, but just, like, what are your
Sure,
favorites of all time?
I'll go with Hanabi. I really like Quicks, the roll and write.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know it's like extremely light, but it's always a blast every time I've broken that out with people, and it goes over well with casual players as well as with gamers. So Quicks is another one that I really love. Um, Catan will always have like a place in my heart just because that's kind of how I got back into the hobby side of things. Um, Dominion was another one of those games that I was just like addicted to, and I don't know, it was brilliant when it came out, and I mean, obviously by how many like copycats there were and how many games it inspired, you can see how brilliant it was. Um, I don't know. I also like Magic the Gathering was one of my first games, like gamery games, and I loved it. The meta game to that was so great that I mean I spent countless hours trying to build decks. So it's another one of those games that I just have a lot of love for. Um, and then from like newer stuff, probably Harmonies is the game that I played the most recently that I thought was like brilliant. Um, but yeah, there's probably too many to mention, but those I'll stop there.
All right.
Cool.
So my final question for you is: knowing what you know now, is there an older game that you would like to rework for today's kind of audience, or with your knowledge as a designer of your past games?
Of just my past games.
Yeah.
Oh, oh goodness. Oh man.
This
Sorry,
choice is right.
I should come ready with some thoughts on this.
No, don't worry. We surprise you with these questions. Don't worry. Take a second.
I mm, maybe Most Wanted. Um, there's elements of that game that I really liked, and I feel like we never like truly uncovered the full potential of that game. So that's one that like I think it would be fun to revisit at some point. And yeah, I'll go with that as my answer.
Cool. I have two final questions, and they'll be pretty quick. The second to last one I'm going to ask real quick is that if you were not a game designer, what would you be doing?
Hmm. I was a packaging engineer before I became a game designer full time. So realistically, that's probably what I'd be doing. Even though I enjoy game design way more than that.
Sure.
Um, and if I had to pick like a different thing that would scratch a similar itch to game design, maybe a chef. Although I'm terrible
Okay.
at multitasking, so I'd probably be a terrible chef. But I feel like it has like a similar like it has a similar like you can immediately try so like you get the idea in your head, you can immediately go and like try it and tinker with it and mess with it. And I feel like that's kind of what I love about game design is like you it's so easy to put together a prototype and just try it out. And I feel like a chef would be a similar thing of just like, you get an idea for something, just go try it out and see if it's terrible or not.
Cool. And my very last question that I'm going to be asking for you today is you brought up the hook, the quote unquote the hook, right? Can you describe to us what you think the hook is, like what, and what's like a perfect example of like a game with a good hook?
Sure. So I'm sure everyone will have their different opinions of what hook is and what makes for a great hook. For me, it's the thing that makes the game really like stick out on shelf or stick out on an Amazon page if that's where you're shopping for it. But it's a thing that makes you intrigued, makes you want to pick up the box. It has to be something that is a bit unusual. I think that's the great games out there are the ones that like if you scan a Target aisle, you'll stop when you see it. You're like, oh, that's great. Like whether it makes you laugh, whether it makes you just like really intrigued as to how it works or what it is, or if it's like a really beautiful box cover. Like I don't know, like Wavelength is it's a striking cover, so you see it and you're like, oh, what is that? Um, I think with Happy Salmon, they achieved it with the fish pouch. It was just like that initial like, what is this thing? I want to pick it up and see what it's all about. Um, Kind of great examples that I've seen out there. I think Throw Burrito is one of the best ones that I've seen. It's like it you see these two squishies that look adorable on the windowed box, and then it's like very clear. It's like the dodgeball card game is the tagline for the game, and you clearly see in the pictures like someone throwing this burrito, and you're immediately like, I want to do that. I want to play with that. So I think that one is really strong. But yeah, I think you can achieve hook in different ways. But ultimately, it's just the thing that really like gravitates you towards that game.
Very cool. And do you have anything else to tell our listeners before we send off?
No, this is a lot of fun. I appreciate getting to chat about this, and I, you know, I'm glad to have the opportunity to do this, and hopefully people walked away with some enjoyment from this. Hopefully I wasn't too boring to listen to, but yeah.
Not at all, not at all.
No.
You're a pleasure to have on the podcast. Do you have social media? Do you have anywhere that people can see your stuff, or just judge by the games?
Man.
If you played one, go try the others.
I'm on Facebook, but I barely use it. I think I used to be on Twitter, but I am not anymore. I'm trying to get off social media, so I don't have any great way to do that. But if I am on Facebook, if anyone ever has like a game question, please feel free to reach out to me there. I usually will occasionally check that and get back to people. Or on BGG, if people ask me questions there, I'll get back to them too. So I definitely want to help out if anyone has any game questions or just wants to chat about design or anything in general.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. We're going to close this out real quick.
Yeah, so hang out with us.
Cool.
We're going to give our send out. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you ever want to contact Everyday Board Games directly, you can email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. Also, we have an Instagram, instagram.com/everydayboardgames, where we post what we've been playing and other silly content.
As well as all video re-uploads and reviews are found on YouTube under youtube.com/everydayboardgames. And if you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on the platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject.
We also stream our episodes live at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames. Come join us. Also, make sure you subscribe to us or follow us, whichever one it is, that you'll be notified when we're performing live and be able to join in on our conversations.
As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. Those include Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and Apple.
So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And with our special guest today,
Ken.
and we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
And remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.